Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a headline that, well, it certainly caught my eye.
Which one's that?
The big drop in pay for SingPost's former group CEO, Vincent Fang, down to $616,400 for the last financial year.
Ah, yes. That's about half of what he got the year before, around $1.2 million.
Exactly. But, this isn't just a story about a pay cut, is it? There's a lot more going on underneath.
Definitely. That number, $616,400, it's really just the surface. It points to a whole saga, a high-profile dismissal, corporate governance probes. The works.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack what's behind that pay figure. We'll look at the timeline, the allegations, the investigations, why top execs were actually terminated.
Give you the full picture of this pretty complex corporate situation.
And before we jump right in, if you find these deep dives useful, maybe hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future ones. It really helps us out.
Okay, let's do it.
So first things first, Mr. Fang's pay. That's $616,400 for the year ending March 31st. How did that break down? And why so much lower?
Well, the key thing is, it wasn't for a full year's work. He was dismissed on December 21st. So that amount reflects his pay up to that point.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it was mostly fixed salary, about $570,600. Then you had CPF contributions of $10,500 and around $35,000 in benefits. Think medical, car allowance, that kind of thing.
So the drop from $1.2 million isn't a performance thing. It's purely because he left early under a cloud.
Precisely. His departure was involuntary, and that's tied directly to the lower figure.
And where did this cloud start forming? I understand it began with a whistleblowing report.
That's right. Back on January 17th, SingPost got this report. It concerned their international e-commerce logistics business, the non-regulated side.
Okay, international parcels. And the allegation.
It was pretty specific. It claimed that staff were manually keying in DF status codes for lots of parcels.
DF, delivery failure.
Exactly. Delivery failure. The report alleged this was basically fate, suggesting a delivery attempt had failed when maybe it hadn't even happened.
Why would they do that?
Well, two main reasons, apparently. First, a DF code counted as a valid status update, helping them meet their internal KPIs, their targets.
Right.
And second, maybe more importantly, it helped them avoid paying penalties to a major customer if deliveries weren't actually made on time or properly attempted.
Okay, so it was about hitting targets and saving money by fudging the data.
Of the allegation, yeah.
Yep.
Essentially manipulating performance metrics.
That sounds serious. How did the company react initially?
To their credit, the audit committee was told right away, the same day the report came in. Internal auditors started looking into it immediately.
And what did they find?
They found substance to the claim. They confirmed that, yes, manual DS entries were being used to avoid penalties.
Okay.
They also informed the regulator, IMDA, although they stressed it didn't affect local mail delivery here in Singapore.
But things escalated from there, didn't they?
They did, because management's version of events, their representations, started to clash with what the internal auditors were finding.
Conflicting stories.
Exactly. So the audit committee decided they needed outside help. They brought in external lawyers in early April, then forensic accountants later that month.
And these external investigators?
They confirmed it too. The data falsification was happening. The evidence was piling up.
So with clear evidence, what happened to the staff directly doing this keying in of false codes?
Right. The focus initially went to the International Business Unit, the IBU. Disciplinary action started against 3 staff in May. They were terminated in June. A police report was actually filed against them later, in November.
Wow. Did they contest it?
They initially claimed wrongful dismissal, but interestingly, 2 of them dropped their claims later, and the third just didn't pursue it, which kind of suggests
the case against them was pretty strong.
You could certainly infer that, yeah.
What about the customer who was, potentially being misled by these codes?
SingPost told the customer what had happened. They reached a settlement, kept confidential, but SingPost said it wasn't financially material.
And surprisingly,
yeah, the contract with that customer was renewed in August.
that's interesting. But they still reported it.
They did. It was listed as a substantiated fraud case in their 2024 sustainability report. So acknowledging the issue publicly, even with a renewed contract.
Okay, so that deals with the operational level. But then the investigation moved up the chain, right? Phase 2.
Correct. Phase 2 looked at senior management's conduct, specifically the former CEO Vincent Fang, the group CFO Vincent Yick, and the IBU CEO, Liu.
And what was the focus there? Their role in the initial cover-up, or?
It was about how they handled the whistleblowing report itself, the investigation findings, and also the renewal of that customer contract we just mentioned.
And what did this phase find? This is where it gets really serious for them, I imagine.
Absolutely. The findings here were critical. It emerged that the trio had made, let's call them serious misrepresentations to the audit committee. This was between March and April after they'd seen the internal audit report.
Misrepresentations? Like
Right.
what? What were they telling the committee?
Things that directly contradicted the auditors. They apparently claimed there was no proof of data manipulation, that the DF codes weren't really about avoiding penalties.
Seriously, even after the auditors confirmed it.
Yes. They also apparently suggested it wouldn't lead to liabilities, or that the customer actually asked for it, or that it was sort of standard industry practice.
Wow, that sounds like they were trying to paint a very different picture.
The board certainly thought so. They concluded these claims were false, lacked any independent proof, and basically relied on information from, quote, interested party representatives within the IBU itself.
So essentially trusting the people implicated over their own internal auditors.
That was the board's conclusion. They felt management was actively undermining the internal audit function.
And the board's view on the potential consequences if they'd believed management.
They were quite blunt. They said if they had accepted these misrepresentations, the whole false data entry practice would likely have just carried on. Penalties avoided, trust broken, potentially indefinitely.
That really highlights the importance of the whistleblowing system working, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The chairman, Simon Israel, really emphasized that. He said the process needs to protect whistleblowers and ensure claims are handled impartially. This case seemed to test that.
So faced with these findings, the misrepresentations, undermining the audit, what did the board do?
They concluded it amounted to grossly negligent actions and serious breaches of policy, a fundamental failure to do their jobs responsibly.
Grossly negligent. That's strong language.
It is. It implies more than just a mistake. It suggests a serious lack of care or competence, or maybe worse, in fulfilling their duties. Basically, the board said they'd lost confidence and trust in their judgment.
So disciplinary proceedings against the top three.
Yes, started on November 11th. They were given a chance to respond. Fang and Yik used lawyers. Yu responded himself.
And the board wanted to be sure.
Seems so. They even got a second independent legal opinion from another senior counsel in December, just to be absolutely thorough and fair.
And the final decision.
The board voted to dismiss them on December 20th, effective immediately the next day, December 21st.
And what does grossly negligent really signal to, us listening? Is it incompetence or something more deliberate?
Well, it suggests their failure was severe. A major lapse in their duty to protect the company's interests, a disregard for proper procedures, undermining internal controls. It points to a really profound breakdown of trust at the highest level. It's not just a nukes moment.
And are Fang and Yik accepting this?
No, not at all. They're fighting it. Contesting the dismissal based on both the substance of the claims and the process used, they categorically reject any suggestion of gross negligence or misrepresentation.
So this might not be the absolute end of the story legally.
Could be. And post-dismissal, Mr. Fang was also asked to step down from all director roles at SingPost and related companies. He did that in January, a clean break from the company's perspective.
Okay, let's widen the lens a bit. What about the pay for the other executives involved, Liu and Vincent Yik?
For Liu, his pay for the period he worked April to December 21st was somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000. They don't give the exact figure in that band.
Right.
Vincent Yik's pay was reported together with another executive who left earlier, Shireen Abdul Salam. Their combined total was about $950,000. So again, reflecting incomplete years for both.
And what about the board itself, the non-executive directors? Any interesting points there?
Their total compensation was over $1.3 million. The outgoing chairman, Simon Israel, got $288,600.
He oversaw this whole difficult period.
He did. And interestingly, the board proposed an extra payment for him, $250,000, sort of a thank you for the extra work during the leadership transition mess. He turned it down. Mr. Israel, who's 72, declined the payment, which is quite a statement.
It certainly is. Speaks volumes. So amidst all this drama at the top, how's SingPost actually doing as a business?
Well, the headline profit number looked okay, $245 million, but that was massively inflated by selling off their Australian business, a one-off gain.
So the underlying picture?
Not so rosy. Underlying net profit dropped sharply, down over 40% to just under $25 million. And they actually made a small net loss, about $500,000, in the second half of the year.
Ouch. So the business is under pressure.
Definitely. Mr. Israel acknowledged persistent pressures and said they needed decisive restructuring. They're clearly in a tough spot operationally.
What are they doing about it? What's the plan?
They've launched a strategic reset. That means cutting costs, streamlining how they work, and importantly, bringing that international cross-border business back into the main Singapore unit, trying to get more synergy there.
Makes sense after the issues in the IBU.
Exactly. And they're investing too, putting $30 million into upgrading their big e-commerce logistics hub. They want to triple its capacity, handle maybe 400,000 parcels a day. So looking long-term despite the current pain.
But the traditional mail side of things, that's still struggling.
Oh, yes. The domestic postal business is still feeling the squeeze. They're apparently still talking to the government about its long-term financial future. That's a challenge that isn't going away.
And leadership going forward. Chairman sorted, but CEO.
Right. Ms. Teo Swee Lian is taking over as chair after the AGM in July.
Mm.
But crucially, they haven't announced a permanent replacement for Vincent Fang as group CEO yet. That's a big gap still to fill.
So wrapping this up, this whole SingPost situation, it really shows how a single news item, like a CEO's pay cut, can just be the entry point into a much bigger story.
Absolutely. A story about corporate accountability, how vital whistleblowing is, and what happens when leadership, well, fails to uphold standards.
It really puts a spotlight on the pressure on these big public companies to have strong governance, doesn't it?
It does, especially when you have complex operations spread internationally. The whole sequence, the report, the internal audit, the escalation, the external checks, the dismissals, it shows how these processes should work, but also how challenging it can be when there's resistance or attempts to mislead from within.
Yeah, it demonstrates how easily trust can be damaged when leaders don't act with integrity.
It's fragile.
So as we finish this deep dive, here's something maybe to think about. We live in an age where information travels fast. Scrutiny is high. How does a public scandal like this at SingPost affect more than just the share price?
Good question.
What does it do to public trust, to our expectations of corporate leaders? And maybe the key question is, what lessons can other companies learn from this about building a culture where, telling the truth and being accountable wins out, even when things get tough?
A lot to chew on there. How do you make sure accountability genuinely prevails?
Indeed. Well, that's all we have time for on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. If you found this interesting, do give us a like and subscribe for more.
See you next time.